Hello there, you're watching All 24 News live from Algiers. Here are today's top stories. President Tebboune thanks the Algerian football selection of local players for their heroic performance in CHAN 2022. New clashes have erupted in Akabit camp in occupied Palestine after new raids of the Zionist armed forces. Dozens of Russian and Ukrainian prisoners of war have returned home following a prisoner swap. Also ahead in our news, U.S. shoots down Chinese spy balloon off U.S. coast. Hello again, I'm Karim Zachary. Welcome to World News. Those were today's headlines. Now let's get down to the details. First in our topical news, Senegal team won the African Cup for locals after it defeated Algeria in penalty kick-out. The match witnessed a long-standing competition of both teams as it lasted for 120 minutes, which led to reach the penalties. Algeria player Kendoussi hits the crossbar and Senegal win the CHAN for the first time in their history. And Algeria fans are distraught. Massive win and history for Senegal, who continued to win continental titles just 1 year after winning the AFCON. Senegal are the first West African side to win the AFCON. President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, on Saturday thanked the Algerian selection of local players for their heroic performance in the African Nations Football Championship tournament. President Tebboune, on his official Twitter account, also thanked the Algerian football fans on the success of the Continental Championship. Patrice Motsepe attended a press conference on Saturday at the Nelson Mandela Stadium in Baraƙi, in which he discussed a number of current events, including the CHAN 2022, the World Cup 2026, and other topics. The details with Sofiane Kinturi.
The president of the Confederation of African Football, Patrice Motsepe, hailed the great achievement of Algeria in the organization of the African Championship of local players, stressing that the bet was successful. CAF President Patrice Motsepe expressed in a press conference his regret about the absence of Moroccan selection from CHAN 2022, assuring that the investigations will be taken according to CAF and FIFA regulations.
The non-participation of Morocco in the CHAN and the compliance that all of us, whether you're Morocco or Algeria, all of us have to comply with the CAF and FIFA rules and regulations. So those are some of the issues that we have to deal with. And let's, we've got to be honest and frank with each other.
Regarding Algeria's candidacy file to organize CAN 2025, the CAF president underlined its chances compared to other countries, seeing the good job it has done during this tournament. He added that should Algeria be chosen, it would be able to successfully host it. He affirmed that the selection process would be based on independent reports.
Algeria, when you compare Algeria with all of the other countries that have submitted their bids, and of course, as I said, EXCO will decide based on this independent report. Absolutely. Absolutely. Algeria has shown all of us.
The championship conclusion gave African youth, athletes and guests who were present in Algeria's stadiums the most beautiful memories, in a country that has always been the support of African continent, which strives for its prosperity and attainment of the highest ranks.
To a different topical news now, the Speaker of the African Parliament, Fortuné Charombir, during his visit to the Sahrawi refugee camps and his meeting with the Algerian president of the Upper House of Parliament, stressed the need to find a solution to the Sahrawi issue, vowing to raise it to the highest levels in Africa. Zara Farjani with more details.
The last colony in Africa, Western Sahara. is still on its path to snatch its right to self-determination. Many leaders who visit the refugee camps affirm their support to the Sahrawi people's just cause. The most recent visit was that of President of the African Parliament, Fortuné Charombira, during which he hailed the Sahrawi steadfastness despite their suffering, pledging to work to raise the Sahrawi issue in regional forums.
We are here because we've heard a lot about your situation, your suffering. And we are aware that several attempts have been made to resolve this conflict. We are also, as a parliament, given the mandate of issues of ensuring that we respect human rights. Human rights should apply equally to everybody on this continent.
Algeria is well known for its unwavering support to the Sahrawi Republic because its diplomacy is based on respect of state sovereignty and the rejection of interference in their internal affairs. Hence, President of the African Parliament, when concluding his meeting with Algerian President of Council of Nations, Salah Goudil, agreed on the necessity of activating mechanisms of the African Parliament and the importance of strengthening its capabilities to continue its duty in the service of the continent and the African people.
Algeria, please remain steadfast, remain as revolutionary as you have been in the past. The issue of Sahrawi, as I say, is the outstanding business of the continent. The conflict between Morocco and Sahrawi cannot be watched and people just sit and say there is conflict. Because we now understand they are back into fighting. When we are saying Africa, guns should be silenced. But we salute Algeria. We salute Algeria for what it is doing for its people and for the continent.
Charombira's visit to the Sahrawi refugee camps coincides with the progress of the Sahrawi cause on more than one level amid international demands to empower the Sahrawi people with their right to self-determination and independence.
To another just cause now, Palestinian civilians in West Bank are still living under the violence of the Zionist occupation forces. New clashes have erupted in Akabit camp after new raids of the Zionist armed forces. This comes shortly after the international calls for the region and the European package of aid for the Palestinian people. The details with Osama Ayadi this time.
Clashes have erupted again in the occupied West Bank in Palestine after Zionist forces launched a new wave of raids against Palestinian citizens. The confrontations came shortly after various international calls for calm in the region. Zionist leadership is persistent on its crimes against citizens in the West Bank as part of the last measures launched by the extreme right-wing leaders who are internationally known for corruption and hate against the Arab nation in general and Palestinians in specific.
They went in and did not have a specific house in mind. They targeted the whole camp. And they started from the entrance of the camp onwards with their ill-doing, and then they left.
The clashes left at least 10 Palestinians wounded during the raids which targeted the Akbat Jaber refugee camp, where a house was badly damaged as the Zionist military forces carried out several arrests. In response, Palestinian civilians showed refusal by burning tires and throwing rocks at the military vehicles of the Zionist forces, who were firing tear gas at residential buildings.
And in this mess, houses on the sides of the camp were targeted as if they were criminals, while they were asleep in their houses, civilians who have nothing to do with the incident.
Amidst international reactions against the Zionist injustice and continued aggression against the Palestinian civilians, the European Union announced the 2022 financial assistance package to the Palestinian people. The aid was announced during a signing ceremony in the presence of the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. This package will support Palestinian Authority expenditures for social allowance, medical referrals, salaries and pensions, and projects in the occupied Palestinian territory, in addition to EU-funded projects in East Al-Quds.
Moving on now, Tunisian President Kais Saied called for the need to build a strategic stock of foodstuffs to abort political attempts to fabricate crises, indicating that the phenomenon of the disappearance of foodstuffs is supported by forces working to fuel the situation to benefit from it politically. According to a statement issued by the Tunisian presidency, Saïed met the Prime Minister, the Minister of Trade and Export Development, and the Director General of Border Guards to discuss the reasons for the loss or scarcity of a number of foodstuffs, stressing that all concerned parties should assume their responsibilities.
It's no longer a secret that whoever stands behind the continuation of this phenomenon seeks in every way to fuel the social situation in order to benefit politically. The Tunisian people are no longer away from these reasons and demand accountability for all those who have committed crimes against them and all those who seek to starve and abuse them.
The head of the Libyan National Unity Government, Abdelhamid Dbeiba, called on international oil companies to resume their activities in light of what he called the state of stability in the country. Dbeiba, in a speech delivered on his behalf by the Minister of Finance, Khaled Al Mabrouk, during the opening of the Oil and Gas Sector Support Forum organized in Istanbul, and financial institutions. This comes at a time when many national and international parties have reached a consensus on the need to achieve elections as soon as possible to solve the country's political crisis.
The Government of National Unity of Libya supports the activation of agreements and the conclusion of new contracts that help to increase the production of oil and gas. We call on international companies to resume their activities in Libya, given the stability of the country.
Still in Africa, this time Burkina Faso. Traoré said on Friday that his country had not cut off diplomatic ties with France. This comes at a time when he has asked to withdraw its forces amid growing domestic calls to end foreign interference in the country. Islam Sid with more.
Burkina Faso's President Captain Ibrahim Traoré says there is no break in diplomatic relations with France, following his country's demand to end French military presence in Burkina Faso. The president stated that his wish to see the French special forces leave Ouagadougou had no impact on diplomatic relations with Paris.
It has nothing to do with diplomacy. The French embassy is there. The French nationals are there, as is our embassy down there. So there is nothing diplomatically that was hit.
While demonstrations against France have been held regularly in the country, the president noted that Burkinabe people want their sovereignty and dignity.
It's a military presence agreement, and as they said, our sovereignty depends on us. So this is what we're demanding through the denunciation of this agreement, so there is no breakdown of diplomatic relations or hatred against a particular state.
On the same occasion, Traoré stressed that his country seeks new orientations and aims at expanding its relations on a larger scale.
Through diverse relationships, we diversify. As you have noticed, a number of missions have been carried out. Others are to come, to really look at another horizon, because we want partnerships, as we like to say, win-win, be frank.
Burkina Faso has entered a new phase in its political and security history. People have shown their support to the transitional government in recent months, who's taken steps to end foreign interference in their lands. Hopes still remain that thousands displaced by terrorist attacks can return home after more than 2 million people have fled the violence.
Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed met leaders of the northern Tigray region forces on Friday for the first time since they signed a peace deal with the national government ending 2 years of war. The Addis Ababa government and forces of the Tigray People's Liberation Front signed agreements in November to permanently end the conflict that killed tens of thousands and displaced millions.
PM Abiy and other officials met today and held a discussion with the TPLF delegation regarding the progress of the peace process. As a result, PM Abiy passed decisions about increasing flights, banking and other issues that would boost trust and ease the lives of civilians.
To Burundi now, East African regional leaders on Saturday renewed their call for an immediate ceasefire by all sides in the conflict in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo that pits the country's military against a rebel group it has accused Rwanda of supporting. At a summit in Burundi's capital, Bujumbura, the leaders of the regional East African Community Bloc called for an immediate ceasefire by all parties. Italy's Coast Guard recovered the bodies of 8 migrants from a ship carrying several dozens who were trying to cross the central Mediterranean. The 42 survivors on board, who were brought to the tiny island of Lampedusa, said the bodies of a baby and a man had been lost at sea. The Italian authorities and the German NGO CI also announced that 12 migrants who were on board this boat died during the attempted crossing. Hundreds of people took the streets on Saturday in Pakistan's northwest city of Peshawar to protest against recent militant attacks and a deteriorating security situation. Protesters chanted anti-government and anti-army slogans and called for peace at the demonstration, which was organized by a group of political parties.
The only reason we came out today is that we want peace on our land, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Peshawar. We are against terrorism, however is behind it. Terrorism is unacceptable for us.
Sri Lankans have protested in the capital Colombo against the government's decision to organize a pompous military parade to mark the 75th year of independence from British colonial rule at a time when the country is experiencing a dire economic crisis. The celebration on Saturday was condemned by many people who announced a boycott of the event in Colombo, while activists and others expressed anger at what they regarded as a waste of money.
By now, the people are facing a multitude of problems. They can't have 3 meals a day. Democracy is facing a serious challenge with a major crackdown underway. People don't have the right to express their views. That is why the peaceful sit-in protest yesterday was mercilessly attacked and some people were arrested.
The Russian Defense Ministry announced on Saturday that 63 Russian prisoners of war were freed following extensive negotiations with Ukraine. The group released Russian servicemen includes sensitive category persons. On the other hand, Andrei Yermak, the director of the Office of the Ukrainian President, reported that 116 Ukrainian captives had been sent home, including 2 officers and 114 privates and sergeants. The Russian Defense Ministry announced on Saturday that 63 Russian prisoners of war were freed following extensive negotiations with Ukraine. Excuse me, let me start again. It seems that I am repeating the same topic. The winter storm brought days of freezing days and rain, sleet and ice accumulation, causing widespread power outages and dangerously slick roadways in Texas. Officials across the region also urged motorists to stay off the roads after icy roadways across the region. They were blamed for 8 deaths over the past several days. At least 7 people have died as a result of hundreds of wildfires burning across Chile that have destroyed homes and thousands of acres of forest in the midst of a scorching heat wave. A helicopter that was helping combat the flames crashed in the Araucanía region, killing the pilot, a Bolivian national, and a mechanic who was Chilean.
A total of 191 active wildfires were registered nationwide during the afternoon, of which 45 were reported still being fought against, and 146 have been controlled. This is constantly changing because we have also had a very harmful situation, which is an unusual wind in the area that has caused the fire to jump many times from different parts, opening new sources.
In Peru, crowds have blocked roads and forced the shutdown of the economically crucial touristic sites, resulting in the death of 48 people. More with Salman Sip.
Peru's tourism industry has been decimated by weeks of protest and have left 48 people dead in clashes between protesters and security forces since December 7. Lawmakers are at loggerheads over whether to hold a snap election this year, following protests that are demanding the return of ousted leftist President Pedro Castillo.
We have the impression that they despise us, and there is a strong centralism. As in colonial times, Lima continues to be the political, economic, and administrative capital of the country. We're outraged.
It always costs us work and sacrifices, because neither the state nor the institutions support us. There is no help.
As deadly protests rage across Peru, a political battle is unfolding inside the halls of Congress, walled off from the streets by hundreds of police, armored vehicles, and a maze of gates. Despite the violence and polls that show the majority of Peruvians won the election brought forward, Congress appears to be in deadlock. At least 3 election bills have been rejected and others knocked back before being debated in the past week, with parties on the left and right apparently unable or unwilling to compromise.
We have dysfunction of parliament. We should have kept harmony, unity, dialogue, agreement, and consensus. We have never had that consensus. We have never had understanding between us. That is what the population is punishing, our inability to agree.
Days of closed-door talks have appeared to make little progress, and an exasperated Boluarte has introduced her own bill, which calls for elections in October and a new president taking office on December 31st.
To another topical news, the U.S. Defense Department said on Friday that another Chinese surveillance balloon is sailing over Latin America 2 days after a similar high-altitude balloon was discovered traveling over the United States. Furthermore, Secretary of State Antony Blinken postponed a high-profile visit to China after the suspected Chinese spy balloon was discovered in U.S. airspace. President Joe Biden, for his part, also stated that the balloon was shut down.
Order the Pentagon to shoot it down on Wednesday as soon as possible. They decided, without doing damage to anyone on the ground, they decided that the best time to do that was when we got over water outside within 12-mile limit. They successfully took it down, and I want to compliment our aviators who did it, and we'll have more to report on this a little later. Thank you.
Mr. President, what did you say about China? What's your message to China?
You're saying the recommendation was from your national.
I told them to shoot it down
on Wednesday.
But
the recommendation.
They said to me, "Let's wait till the safest place to do it."
What does this mean for relations?
Countries in Latin America and the Caribbean are stagnating in their struggle with the corruption, with most unable or unwilling to change robust criminal networks that profit from long-standing graft. A major new report has shown Latin America's overall corruption score was unchanged from 2021, but 163 places in the ranking separate the best Uruguay from the West and Venezuela.
In the Americas, 27 out of 32 countries have been at a standstill in the fight against corruption for several years. It is necessary to make better use of technology, strengthen collaboration between regional prosecutors, and implement more forceful measures to stop illicit financial flows.
For more international news making headlines around the world, here is the news in brief.
Pope Francis met with his internally displaced people in the South Sudanese capital Juba on Saturday. On his second day in Africa, Francis called for women and girls to be respected, protected and honored during a meeting with some of 2 million people who have been forced by fighting a flooding to flee their homes.
Pakistan has blocked access to Wikipedia for not removing what it denounced as blasphemous content. The host of the world's largest free online encyclopedia said Saturday. The Wikimedia Foundation demanded that the Pakistan Telecommunication Authority immediately reverse the ban and explaining that it believes that access to knowledge is a human right.
El Salvador has opened one of the largest prisons in Latin America after the government cracked down on criminal gangs. The 40,000 capacity tourism confinement center was inaugurated on Tuesday to help relieve some of the overpopulation in the country's prison system.
Spanish fashion designer Paco Rabanne, as famous for his metal outfits as his eccentric statements, died Friday at the age of 88 in France, where his family has taken refuge due to the Spanish Civil War. Fans and passers-by passed in front of a Paco Rabanne boutique in Paris, paying tribute to the Spanish couturier with deep sadness.
Well, that's the end of our news. For more, visit our social media platforms. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.